It's been a while since I've uploaded a glitch video, so let's not waste any time. This is the finale to the Dark Souls series, and as such, it's had perhaps the longest active life of any single FromSoft game. There were a ton of glitches to research this time around, and since I only wanted to cover glitches that can still be done today on the latest patch of the game, or on the Fire Fades edition, which is the same patch, there had to be a lot of trial and error and research conducted to construct a modern list of the ones that haven't been patched out. Online or offline, console or PC, 30 FPS or higher. Everything you're about to see can be done on any platform, provided you're on the latest patch. Sit back, pour yourself a shot of Estus, and let's break this game. Starting off small, here's an easy way to cheese the fight with Gundyr on a new playthrough. First, proceed through the Cemetery of Ash as usual, and into Udix Gundyr's boss room. Pull the coiled sword from his chest, and open the settings menu, highlighting Quit Game. The moment you see Gundyr move, quit out and reload to respawn outside of the boss room, still in possession of the coiled sword. Walk forward until you see Gundyr begin to rise, then immediately sprint back through the door. You should have time to make it back outside before the fog gate loads, meaning that Gundyr will be aggressive with a wall in between the two of you, making for an easy kill, especially if you have range attacks at your disposal. I haven't been able to get this to work at Champion Gundyr since he doesn't have a coiled sword to remove, but a setup for him may be discovered in the future as well. So cheers to the journalists who never made it past the tutorial. This one's for you. I think everyone that's played Dark Souls 3 knows about this one, but just for posterity, I'll cover it. The roof of Firelink Shrine is meant to be inaccessible until buying the bell tower key from the shrine handmaid for a whopping 20,000 souls. But if you don't need to get to the bell tower specifically, there's a much cheaper way to access the roof. Walk around the right side of Firelink and up to the ladder that has yet to be knocked down. By abusing the hitbox of this slanted tree, you can run up it partially and jump onto the lower tier of the roof before the player character slides back down. From here you can grab a hidden crystal lizard, pick up the Estus Flash shard from the rafters inside to get an extra heal, trade the crows for items, and then pass through the illusory wall at the end to drop down and pick up the Silver Serpent Ring before ever entering the High Wall of Lothric. This has been in the game since version 1.0, but exploits that involve level geometry are rarely ever patched because of the technical work involved, and the tree glitch is no exception. Skipping forward a bit, once you complete the High Wall and the Undead Settlement, you'll face the Road of Sacrifices and be required to defeat the Crystal Sage at the end in order to access the Cathedral of the Deep. Or you would be, if you couldn't just jump past the fog gate. First, step through the fog to enter the fight as normal, then run to the back left corner where the exit door will appear once he's defeated. By jumping from the left side of the door up onto the rubble on the right, and then jumping upward again with enough speed, you can land on top of the collapsing wall. From there, roll backwards a few times to eventually end up on the path that leads to the Cathedral of the Deep, with the Crystal Sage and associated fog gates still present. While the Crystal Sage isn't one of the harder bosses in the game, skipping it allows you to pick up items from the Cathedral of the Deep and Irithyll later on, while maintaining your ability to fight invaders in the Crucifixion Woods. Just don't mind the health bar at the bottom of your screen. To be completely honest, more often than not, you'll end up stuck inside the wall rather than on top of it, and be forced to warp out and try again. So instead of being an easier way past the Sage, this glitch is more like a tech option for someone doing a weird challenge run where they can't kill the Crystal Sage in the first place. But the Crystal Sage isn't the only boss with an exploit, and this one I think is much more practical. Once you reach the Abyss Watchers at the end of Farron Woods, equip a weapon with a longsword moveset, and gently creep forward until you're standing directly on the line that triggers the intro cutscene for the fight. Charge a one-handed R2, and allow the stab to push you forward into the scene trigger. Then, quickly quit out and reload the game. You may respawn inside the fog gate and be trapped, or have to push X to enter it normally. And if that happens, that's your cue that you need to start the lunge just a bit further forward. Once you get the spacing just right, you'll respawn freely, just inside the boss arena. But since the last place you walked was on the opposite side of the cutscene trigger, the game will get confused and the Abyss Watchers will think that you haven't yet entered the arena, meaning only the main boss will spawn, and he will never move or attack back. What's even more shocking is that the freeze remains in effect even after starting the second phase. I absolutely hate this boss, so you better believe I'm using this trick in the future. Just back up your save data before trying this, since you only get one attempt to trigger the cutscene without a fog gate permanently being in your way. So, we've gotten some early items, glitched some bosses, but what about your insatiable greed? There's no currently known soul duplication glitch on the latest Dark Souls 3 patch, but we can duplicate Titanite slabs, which you can then sell to the shrine handmaid if you need souls. Here's how it's done. Meet Sigurd at the end of the Undead Settlement, and help him defeat the fire demon that's there for some reason. Next, return his armor to him after Patches traps him at Cathedral of the Deep. Then talk to him in the Irithil kitchen, and he will proceed to the Profane Capital and end up stuck in a prison cell. He'll give you a Titanite slab as a reward for saving him, and in fact, that item is already registered as being in his inventory. So if you kill him instead of talking to him after opening the cell door, he will drop his weapons and armor set along with the slab. Once he dies, pick up the weapons, then pick up the armor, but don't pick up the final item that remains in the ground. That's the slab. Now, manually walk all the way back to the Church of Yorshka bonfire in Irithil without dying, warping, or resting at a bonfire. When you finally get there, make a loop around the bonfire and then back outside the church. This is the distance at which the game unloads items on the ground in the Profane Capital, and by repeatedly walking in and out of the church in sequence like this, we're forcing the game to load and unload the items in the Profane Capital over and over. The difference between this and every other faraway item is that Dark Souls 3 knows that Sigurd is dead and that he's supposed to drop an item that you have yet to pick up, so it spawns it. But it doesn't bother to check if it's already on the ground. So for every bonfire loop you make in and out of the church, you're adding another Titanite slab to the stack. Again, without dying, warping, or resting, head back to the jail cell in the Profane Capital and pick up your loot. If for some reason you want multiple copies of Sigurd's weapons and armor too, you can just not pick those up at the beginning, and those will be duplicated as well. Funny that a failsafe FromSoft added in to make sure that you don't miss important NPC items ended up backfiring for our benefit. This next glitch comes in two parts. It requires you to pick up the Millwood Greatbow and have a decent supply of great arrows. As you may know, the weapon art of the Millwood Greatbow causes arrows shot from it to detonate as an AoE a few seconds later. If you were to shoot a great arrow at a fog gate, it would get stuck in the fog just as if it were a wall. But if you use the weapon art, the Greatbow's AoE can pass through and damage the boss on the other side, assuming it's spawned and you know where to aim for it. This glitch can be used to kill many bosses without even stepping through the fog gate, and when used against Lorian and Lothric, it's especially effective. The Twin Princes are one of the easier bosses to stagger, and the flaming sword wielded by Lorian can be seen through the fog, giving you something to aim for. If you deal damage to him within a short enough time frame for him to stagger, from the opposite side of the boss fog, you'll break his AI. You can then enter the fog as normal, and Lorian will never attack you. That is, until the second phase, when Lothric joins the fight and Lorian suddenly wakes up. I haven't yet found a way to make the freeze last through the second phase for this boss, but it may very well be possible. In the meantime, you could just kill him from the outside like any other boss. Of course, this is not the only bow-related glitch in Dark Souls 3. I'm sure you knew this was coming. By equipping a bow in your left hand, and a talisman or catalyst or pyromancy flame in your right, you can cast a spell normally, and spam roll, swap to a second spell, and then hold L2 and forward on the analog stick to cast a spell you don't normally have the parameters to cast, even if it would require a different type of magical item in your hand. Oddly enough, when you use Great Combustion as the starting spell, it leaves the graphical effect of the second spell you cast floating in the air. Most of these disappear after a short time, but Way of White Corona doesn't. I decided to take this to the extreme and see just how big of a mess I can make on the screen, and as you can see, this glitch can be really helpful in making sure that your Dark Souls 3 character is getting just as much Corona exposure as you are in real life.
Oh, brother!
You can do the same thing to force buffs onto weapons that normally can't be buffed as well. For example, if I attune Force and Lightning Blade while holding a bow in my left hand and then cast Force with my right, I can roll, spam cast Force again, and then immediately open the inventory and swap my talisman for a non-buffable weapon. Then, without walking, I can toggle to Lightning Blade, backstep, and hold L2 and forward on the analog stick to force cast Lightning Blade onto this dagger, which shouldn't be able to accept a buff. Now I have a lightning magic aquamarine dagger, And while Magic Weapon would have been the smarter spell to use in this scenario so I don't end up with my damage split across 3 elements, this is just an example, and I wanted you to see and hear the additional lightning damage applied to each hit. It's worth noting that you'll be using the weapon as your talisman or catalyst for this buff, and since most weapons have no magic adjust stat, expect lower numbers than if you cast a buff normally with proper scaling. But then again, for weapons that can't be buffed in the first place, this is free damage. And finally, the last and probably most game-breaking use for the bow glitch, swapping weapon arts. Although there are frame-perfect methods that allow you to do this without a bow, like transferring the Onyx Blade buff onto other weapons, that isn't the same as what I'm about to show you. The bow glitch has a much more generous input window, and I can think of no better example of its power than abusing the repeating crossbow. First, as usual, equip a bow in the left hand, then equip some bolts and great arrows in the ammo slots. Finally, equip the repeating crossbow in the right hand and two-hand it. Now use its weapon art normally by holding L2 and pressing R1. Next, taking your leisurely time, open the inventory and switch the repeating crossbow for a Greatbow. Now, without two-handing it or walking, backstep and then hold L2 and forward. The game thinks you're using the crossbow's weapon art, but knows you have a Greatbow equipped, so it does what else? Rapidly fire out 10 great arrows all at once, all with proper scaling and rings and upgrades to the Greatbow applied to each and every one. Needless to say, this glitch absolutely decimates bosses, and better yet, you can chain it. Goodbye, Soul of Cinder. You were fun while you lasted. And with that, that's all for Dark Souls 3. Thanks for watching. SIKE! I've been working on this video for 3 months, and you thought I was going to end on a crossbow? Please. What I'm about to show you is single-handedly the reason that this video took so long to produce. We're going to use a boss to hunt down our invaders. To be absolutely clear, the footage you're watching right now was done in the current Dark Souls 3 patch on PS4, but can also be done on PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PS5, whether it be Fire Fades or Original. There is no version of Dark Souls 3 in which this will not work, but to explain it, I need to give you some backstory. The glitch we're going to take advantage of is called the Teardrop Glitch. It's been around since version 1.0 and is used by speedrunners to skip large sections of the game as a whole. Essentially, you equip a form of HP regeneration, cast Tears of Denial, and then hit one of a few curated out-of-bounds hitboxes to kill your character, but also trigger Tears and a tick of HP regen at the same time. You're then left with a player character that the game sees as both alive and dead simultaneously. This makes you appear invisible and turns off the player's gravity, while still maintaining full camera and combat control. The lack of gravity can allow you to walk around walls and over gaps, but due to how game-breaking it can be, almost all teardrop locations have been systematically removed with successive Dark Souls 3 patches. In fact, the only remaining one that you can perform solo lies in the Ancient Wyvern boss room, in which you perform the quick kill on the right side of the arena, sprint forward toward the far edge, and then jump and perform a mid-air weapon art. The cutscene will trigger, teleporting you away at the same time Tears activates, teleporting you to the next area of the peak in a half-dead, half-alive state where gravity is inactive. And as cool as this can be, you're locked to Archdragon Peak, so for our purposes, teardropping here isn't very useful. In contrast, the Profane Capital is a much more practical location, but the teardrop here abuses an invisible kill plane, not a drop, meaning once you walk into the kill plane's hitbox, you'll need the help of another player to somehow pull you back out, or you'll die as usual. Luckily, this is possible, thanks to nothing other than the bow glitch. Pulling this off requires you to pick up the Sacred Flame Pyromancy in the Demon Ruins, as well as the Lightning Arrow Miracle in the Ring City. So yes, at least one person will need access to the DLC. Then of course you'll need enough attunement to memorize both spells at once, and the 35 faith necessary to actually cast Lightning Arrow. Here's how the glitch works. Equip a bow in the left hand and a talisman in the right. Two-hand the talisman, and hold L2 to poise cast Lightning Arrow. Then backstep and open the equipment screen, releasing L2. Swap the talisman for a parrying shield, push up on the D-pad to switch to Sacred Flame, backstep and then hold up on the analog stick and L2 at the same time. It's okay to release the analog stick now, but don't stop holding L2. You'll know that you've gotten it when you're holding a lightning arrow, but there's no bow surrounding it. If you don't see that, just try again. Your character is now trying to cast Lightning Arrow, Sacred Flame, and two-hand a bow all at once, and none of them are going to work. Release L2 near an enemy, and you'll get the Sacred Flame animation, but deal no damage. That's what we're counting on. Now back to the Teardrop. The specific location we need in the Profane Capital is a small ledge you drop onto from the platform at the top of a ladder that leads to Irithyll Dungeon. This ledge is not intended to be a place your character can stand, and landing on it is extremely precise. I would recommend practicing this by itself first. Once you actually make it, you'll be stopped by an invisible wall if you walk left, and be killed if you walk right. This is the kill plane I was speaking of earlier. Okay, so with all that said, here's the setup. Player 1 needs to have a bow, talisman, parrying shield, sacred flame, lightning arrow, 35 faith, and a way to invade. Player 2 needs a talisman, Tears of Denial, 15 faith, a source of HP regeneration, and the ability to be invaded. Player 1 invades Player 2, drops down onto the ledge, moves to the left side, and sets up the 0 damage Sacred Flame without falling off. Player 2 then drops down beside them, casts Tears, equips their HP regen, and then both players begin slowly walking to the right. Player 2 will hit the kill plane first, and the moment Player 1 sees this, they should release L2, snapping Player 2 back to their location but dealing no damage. Tears of Denial will proc along with 1 tick of HP regen, and since Player 2 is no longer within the kill plane, they end up in this half-dead, half-alive state that I'm calling New Teardrop. The distance needed between players is fairly precise here. If the two players are too close together, then Player 2 won't be pulled back far enough from out of the kill plane and will die as normal, even if the 0 damage Sacred Flame goes off correctly. But if the players are too far apart, Sacred Flame won't actually reach far enough to grab them in the first place. Don't get me wrong, this isn't easy, but it is possible, and it only needs to be accomplished once. At this point, Player 1 can either die or Black Crystal out. Player 2 has no gravity, and they can walk all the way from the Profane Capital, through Irithyll Dungeon, and back up to Irithyll itself using stairs and specific parts of level geometry to gain or lose height as needed. The goal is to travel all the way to the boss fog of Pontiff Sulyvahn, using railings and statues nearby to gain as much height as possible, and then walk all the way around the right side of the boss room to make it to Anor Londo without ever having fought him. You can light the Anor Londo bonfire now, or simply walk around and activate the shortcut elevator in Sulyvahns boss room as a safety net in case you die. If you keep going deeper into Anor Londo in Teardrop state, you can even walk through the wall by going left around the corpse of the giant blacksmith and end up underneath Aldrich's boss room. Luckily, Aldrich has a long, nasty-looking tail that hangs through the floor, meaning you can attack it and defeat him without the boss ever moving or retaliating at all. If he isn't here for you, you may need to enter the boss fog normally once to force him to spawn. If that's the case, you can set up the new Teardrop Glitch again afterward, try again, and nothing will be missed. Once you have the Sulyvahn elevator shortcut unlocked, warp back to Irithyll to reactivate gravity, and enter Sulyvahns boss fog as normal. Run over to the left to take the elevator up, and try not to die in the process. Once at the top, allow Sulyvahn to step onto the elevator and pull the lever to raise him up to the top floor. There's no fog gate at the exit of this room, meaning you can lead Sulyvahn out into any part of Anor Londo that you want. Of course, this area also just happens to be the PvP hotspot in Dark Souls 3, and by popping a seed of a giant tree whenever a player invades, you can host a fight club between invaders and Pontiff Sulyvahn, getting all the souls for every player he defeats, and yes, Sulyvahns' health and damage does scale with whichever New Game Plus cycle you're on. Once again, because I know people are going to ask, this is on the latest patch of Dark Souls 3 and can be done on every platform. And also because I know people are going to ask, no, this isn't going to get you banned from the servers. Literally, how would they even know? This is nothing but unmodified game code being used in an unintended way. You only have to do the new Teardrop setup once to activate the elevator. From that point on, you can call it from both directions and pull Sulyvahn out over and over again. You know, as long as he doesn't die. Actually, maybe make a save data backup just in case. I hear Prod still invades here sometimes. As always, hope this video has been a pleasure. Have fun.